This week on Merchants of Change, we've got Tyler Huntey. Tyler played Division I baseball at Central Michigan before transitioning to sales with Detroit Trading. He worked in sales for over 5 years before becoming an entrepreneur, building his child care business, Huntey's Clubhouse. Here he is, Tyler Huntey.
I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder and CEO of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes and military veterans into becoming a professional salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change.
What's up, kid? Today on the show, we got Tyler Huntey. Tyler, thank you for joining, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, JR.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you. So a little bit of background for you, Tyler. We started our show to really, help the audience that we target. We work with former elite athletes and military veterans, and we help them transition into sales profession, right? Our audience is a lot of folks like that, a lot of people that are brand new to sales, and we also have like a lot of leaders and executives that listen in as well. So we try to drive the conversation to give a little bit of value to everybody. We start with your sports career, talk a little bit about your transition, and then we kind of end the show around getting some nuggets around business, sales, those kind of things before we sign off. Sound like a good plan to you?
Yeah, man, that sounds great.
Awesome. So I always ask like a really broad question, Tyler, at the beginning. If I were to say, tell me about your favorite memories from growing up and playing baseball, what is like the first thing that pops into your brain?
Probably our championship we won at Central Michigan. I keep the ring right here next to me. It's the most memorable thing from any of my sports. I mean, we had some good high school teams, but winning at the Division I level is always a pretty special thing. And then, a lot of the memories are just around the camaraderie with the guys, right? Like the bus trips, the lifts, the practices, just spending time with a group of people that you're sharing a mission with. I miss that sometimes.
Dude, pull that hardware out again. That thing is.
Oh yeah, the ring. I keep it right. I'm always strapped.
That's awesome. Is that a conference championship? What is that?
Yeah, it's a conference championship. Yep.
I got one of those. It's good hardware.
It is.
It's kind of funky to wear it. I think I've worn it to a couple weddings, and people think that it's a Super Bowl ring. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. It's so big. It's like only 2 Central Michigan baseball events. Outside of that, there's too many questions.
My father was a high school hockey coach. They won a state championship, and he actually got his ring remade like 10 years after the championship, and he wears it everywhere. And he's a big dude, so people always think he was an NFL player. He's like, no, this is a Division III Massachusetts high school state championship.
It's I can't really wear it around my dad. He was also a catcher at Central Michigan, but he has 4 of them. So he's like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, check out what I got." So I never win that one.
You said something that I think we hear almost every time, whether we ask an athlete or a veteran. They talk about camaraderie and being around your teammates. I couldn't agree more with you. It's like the best part of playing sports, especially at that level. How do you think, like looking back, how do you think your teammates would have described you, Tyler?
Well, after they got past the smart remarks, depends who you ask. I would say, what I'd hope they would say is that I was a team guy, right? I was a guy who put the team before myself. I always wanted to do whatever it took to win. And I was never a person who was going to ask of anybody else what I wouldn't do myself. And, being a catcher, when you're early into the game, you're doing a lot of the really not fun stuff, catching a lot of bullpens, grinding. There's days you wouldn't even hit because you were in the bullpen. So, having that badge and like I went through the grind, I think a lot of people respect that.
I agree with you. I grew up obviously playing baseball. I was baseball, football, hockey was the sport I went on to play college. But as a hockey player, my comparison for catchers, and you probably aren't going to like this, is you guys are the goalies of baseball.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
You got to be a little nuts to sit back there, dude.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I just wanted to be in the action so bad that I was a catcher, right? It's like, keep me in. I can't stand standing in the field.
I love it. I love it. Now, so you win a ship. Great college career. Did you have plans for a career after baseball?
Oh, I mean, I really wanted to play professional baseball. And, when I was in college, if you would have asked me, what are you going to do after school? I would have said, I'm going to play baseball. And, I had a great career. In my senior year, I underperformed. I had a small injury that I didn't want to push through to try and play. I had people around me kind of saying like, oh, maybe this is a good time to be done. And, uh, I decided to end my playing career and move on from there.
Yeah. So once you like realized, all right, I went through the same thing by the way with hockey, but then like, did you have a plan for post baseball? Like, what did that transition look like?
Yeah, so post baseball, I didn't grow up in a very affluent family. My dad worked at a school, and my mom owned a childcare center, which we'll get into. And I went and worked third shift at a factory because I had student loans to pay. Yeah, so I did that, and it was an interesting experience. They were glad to have me, but I did that for a few months, and I knew it wasn't a long-term gig, and working third shift and trying to interview during the day didn't work very well. So I eventually moved past that. And I was living down in Grand Rapids then in the city, moved back to my hometown in with my parents. So like 23, whatever year old guy living back with mom and dad. And I was making money by being a substitute teacher. And it was like if there was ever a time in my life when I was depressed, it would have been that point because I didn't have a purpose, right? Your whole life going through, it was like sports, you play college sports and your life is that sport and you have aspirations to play later down the road and it doesn't work out. And I had a friend tell me when I was going through it, he's like, you have to understand that the athlete dies twice. Like when your sports career is over, like you have to really reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
And I was at the place where I was trying to understand who I was going to be. And eventually, my mom, of course, shares all of her children's current situations with her sisters. And one of her sisters reached out to me and said, hey, sounds like you're looking to find a career path. I'm having a wine party at my house on Friday. She lived down in Metro Detroit, so 3 hours from us. And there's a guy coming who's a friend of the family. And I don't know what he does, but I know he makes a lot of money. And you might as well come down here and meet with him. And I remember laying on my bed in my parents' house and being like, I don't really want to drive 3 hours, and just like when you're in that point, you just don't want to move. You just want to be lazy. And I ended up pulling myself up and going down there for the party. And I ended up getting my first job out of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that first job, but I want to go.
First sales job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, but I want to go back a second. Third shift at a factory. What were you guys manufacturing?
Cereal bars. Dude, cereal bars. It was called Hearthside Food Solutions. And the third shift crew is like a unique bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like people who had been like in and out of confinement. And like it was really cool actually because these people were trying to get their stuff together and they were interesting to talk to. Like they had some stories. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I can't even like smell Fruit Loops anymore because that was one of our main ones. It's like I can't even. Cereal bars.
That's incredible. Salt of the earth people on
yeah.
For sure. Dude, that's where you have the degree that I always tell our customers they get with our candidates, and I call it a PhD: poor, hungry, and driven.
Yeah.
And that's what you had. So that's awesome. So you get that first sales job. What are you selling?
So we it was a automotive lead exchange. So automotive car dealerships buy leads
Yeah.
typically from their own OEM, from like the producer. So we sold those in market consumer data to those entities that then sold them to dealerships. So
Got it.
I went in for an interview after I met with Pete, and um, met with everybody, had a good time. They're like, "Hey, you seem like a good guy. We don't really have any positions open, but if you can bring in more business, you can stick around." So they gave me a 40 grand draw, right? So it wasn't even like a salary. They're like, "You better figure it out or you're going to be SOL." And yeah, I mean, my first day at work, I did all the HR stuff. They sat me down in a computer or at like a desk in the middle of the office. It was like a U shape. I was right in the middle, and they gave me a list of old customers. They're like, "Start calling." I was like, "Okay, but like, what do I do if they pick up?" So figure it out. And if it's somebody who wants to talk, come get one of us. So I'm not kidding you. The first day they gave me a list, no training, said start calling.
Yep.
And that was just kind of how it went there. And I ended up figuring it out, and it was a good few years at that company.
That's awesome. By the way, the parallels between our stories are wild. I never worked in a cereal bar factory, but my first sales job, they gave me a phone and a list, and I was like, I don't even know what we do. And he's like, look at our website, dude.
Yeah, seriously. It was like, that's fine. Like, we're giving you a chance. You figure it out.
Yep, yep. And by the way, like I love that premise. The athlete dies twice. That's really powerful, and it's really really true. It's.
Hmm.
I always say it's you go through a mourning period. Like you have those same levels of grief that you have to deal with, which is exactly why we started our company. So thank you for calling that out. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of the parallels and some of your thoughts about skills around sales. But before I do that, I always say sales and entrepreneurship have a lot in common. So let's before we get into the details around like the parallels and things like that, let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. So tell us about your business now and what you guys are doing because I'm very intrigued by it.
Yeah, so now I'm the owner and CEO of Huntey's Clubhouse. We are a 6 location child care operation. So we run child care centers. We work with children from 6 weeks old to 12 years old, and we serve primarily rural communities in Michigan. We have 165 employees and capacity to serve 750 kids each day.
Amazing, amazing. That's a good business. I'm a new dad. I have a 10-month-old, so like I can appreciate I
It's
I can appreciate the effort that I'm sure it is to run that type of business. I can't imagine.
Yeah. And you kind of talk about like, what do you plan after school? And I mean, if you would have asked me 3 months before I came back and did this, are you gonna go back and run the family business and grow the childcare operation? I've been like, hell no. But then as soon as I had my first son, immediately changed my mind. When you
Oh,
just realize like how important these kids are, and I saw the opportunity and I had a skill set, and it was a no-brainer to make the move.
that's amazing. And that's a perfect transition into that skill set, right? So, like, when you
Mhm.
think about the skills that you developed as a catcher playing baseball at the college level, what are you seeing that's translated the most from that experience to both your sales career and your entrepreneurship career? Because I think we can bundle them in this situation.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is probably just getting up every day and going, right? When you're an athlete, like I realized this as I progressed in my professional career that, when we were an athlete, we had to get up every day and go to practice. You had to go to class. You had to get good grades. And if you didn't, you're essentially a failure. So you have just like that grind mindset that even if I'm not feeling my best today, I'm still going to go in and put in the work. And quite frankly, when I was playing well and when I was really early, not even early, but when I was in sales, like it was above and beyond, right? Like you're going to get out what you put in. So if you can just come to practice and do what they're asking you, and don't come in early and get in your recovery and your stretching, or stay after and get in extra swings or an extra workout, like those are the things that set you apart. So I was like, when I first got started, I was first one in, last one out. I mean, especially when I started realizing that when I did that, it was just a numbers game, right? So the more effort I put in, like the more at bats I took, the more likely I was gonna hit the ball, right? Get a home run, do whatever, score points. So I just became addicted to getting myself at bat.
I love it. I do. We do like I do office hours with all our candidates every week. It's optional. They can come and ask me questions every week. Someone says, JR, like what if you were going to pick one thing that is the secret to the success you've had in your career? What is it? And I do the same thing every time. I walk over and I turn the light on and I turn it off and I turn it off and I turn it on. And they're like, and I'm like, that's why I had success. And they're like, what do you mean? First one in, last one out. Turn the lights on in the morning and turn them off at night at your office. The rest of the stuff will take care of itself. So
Yeah.
love that. I also saw like some notes on your pre-chat about like the ability to take feedback. We call that coachability. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, athletes, especially like high caliber athletes, are able to understand what's going on outside. When a coach is coaching, they understand what they're saying. And I think in sales, you have to be willing to just put yourself out there and be wrong and make mistakes and have bad calls, because you know that you're going to continue improving as you, get more reps.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Now I'm curious, like, and you probably get these calls, Tyler. If a senior from Central Michigan called you and said, they're thinking about their transition and they've heard from people, hey, you should do sales. What's that conversation look like?
I think that, are you just asking like when someone's looking for a company, what should they be looking for?
Well, it's two-part question. Someone says, I think I want to do sales. How do you make sure that's the right fit for them? And then to your point, when you hear things that tell you that it is, what does a great company look like for that first sales job? So two questions.
Yeah, so I think something you look for is just, I'd probably want to understand, like, if they're a person who grinds, they are the person who went above and beyond, kind of going back to what I said, makes them successful. Like, if you want to be a great salesperson, you have to be persistent. You have to want it. You have to be in it to win. And you have to just make sure this person's a winner. And, you kind of just feel that out after meeting with somebody, talking to their coach, being like, is this guy the guy that you can rely on when you needed him? Was he the guy who showed up every day? Was he the guy who other people looked at and said he's doing the right things? And if he is, then I can almost guarantee you that he'll transition well into a sales role, just because there's so many parallels between what makes a great salesperson and what makes a great athlete, right? Like if you're a great salesperson, or excuse me, a great athlete, like you love practice. You love the process. Because if you don't, you'll never get to the place you're at. And in sales, you have to love picking up the phone and going through the process and going through all of that in order to get the results that you want to get. It's not, trust me, it's not closing deals all day. A lot of the preps up front, and even when you're humming along, even when you're in the zone, you got to keep it going and keep that pipeline full, because the second you let down, someone else is going to get an advantage over you, or you're going to have that gap in your pipeline. And just getting up every day and going through it, it really helps you be successful in sales.
Absolutely. I love that. It's so true. You've got to enjoy the process. Mm-hmm. And to your point, if all you think it is ringing the bell, like, no, going to dinners, playing golf with clients, like, no, that's the fun part. That's not what the money's for, though. The money's for all the other stuff.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? What's a good first company look like, Tyler, you think, for a young new salesperson?
Yeah, so I went into a small company, and then I was in a small company both times. But in my second job, I worked with a lot of people from Microsoft, and I think what really helped me and what I see other people be successful with is having a great mentor,
Yes.
right? Like you have to have someone who's going to put the work into you and give you candid feedback, which I think athletes are really good at taking feedback and not taking it too personally. Like in baseball, hey, you walk in after a bad at bat, your coach is going to tell you, it's like, hey, get out there next time. You have to be able to come in and accept that, take it for what it's worth, get the good out of it, leave the bad behind, and move forward. And it at Detroit Trading, I had Pete, who I mentioned, the guy I met. He ended up being he was the best man in my wedding,
Wow.
and he's, I mean, 15 years older than me, but he put so much effort into helping me be successful. And the main thing that I learned from him is that people want to do business with people. He had a GED. He had a kid when he was 15. He was very like rough around the edges, but when someone did business with him, he was a real dude and he did what he said he was going to do. And people appreciated that and they did business with him for a really long time. So he kind of taught me the basic principles of sales essentially.
That's I mean, those relationships you build early in your career they really do last a lifetime. That's really cool experience. And I couldn't agree more. Like we have our kids get wrapped around the axle a lot on like in office, remote. This one is 5K more on base. This one is in this industry. That one's I'm like, no. I'm like,
No,
pick your leader, not your company. That's
yes,
what
you
you
had to have 100%. Even, I mean, I kind of, we lived through the remote transition, and I genuinely believe that if you have an opportunity to be in an office and in the same office as your boss, like it'll help,
oh yeah.
right?
Oh
If
yeah.
you can be around the people that you're influencing, like it is incredibly impactful.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but you got to have people who are on your side.
What if that same athlete, like what is your guidance to them on like some skills that they should start boning up on before they start their first sales job, you think?
I think there's a really good book that I would recommend people read called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it and it just goes back to kind of what I learned from Pete, right? Like people want to do business with people. You are not a salesperson. You're a problem solver. You don't need to be pushy. You just need to be the one that's there when they need you. And you need to be able to develop relationships and just have that general interpersonal likability that makes people want to do business with you. I mean, one of the main things in that book is when you talk to somebody, say their name.
Yeah.
And it seems so small, but when someone doesn't do it, you're kind of like, huh, did they not remember my name? And it's just that little bit of negativity that can keep you from being the person they reach out to. I mean, that book's just the foundation of understanding yourself and taking it and implementing it into the sales process.
Dylan told me I was gonna love you, and now I know why. Yeah. I literally that's my answer every time any of our kids ask, like, what's a good sales book?
Oh, number one.
It's not necessarily a sales book, right? He's talking about the importance of empathy and listening and understanding other people's perspectives, right? Like you can't be a good salesperson unless you have genuine interest in people.
Hmm.
And remembering names is a great example of that, right? And it's all about encouragement, right? Like at the end of the day, the power of praise and being able to see other people's viewpoints. We call it tactical empathy. We teach it when we talk about discovery and qualification. It's like you have to have compassion for the other person, the problems that they have, their inability to achieve their goals, and then you have to really decide, can you help them close that gap? And that's what
Hmm.
sales is at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way to put it.
I love it. I love it. So good, man. Here's a good question for you. How much
Okay.
of your job as a CEO and as an entrepreneur is selling?
Everything. I mean, everything. I read a book once called To Sell is Human. And the book's okay, but the general concept is good where in everything you're doing in life, you're selling.
Yep.
Like, so from a sales perspective, where I'm at today, I'm working on selling our team to buy into our mission, right? To take great care of these children, to do these different things. I mean, I'm selling community leaders on helping us with different incentives to get a new location into their community. I mean, I'm selling my executive assistant on buying into the process that we're building for her to support me. I mean, it's everything you're doing is selling. I'm so thankful that I started my career in selling and built that, because I think once you have that skill set, you can go anywhere and be successful. You can do any job and be successful because you're able to get, I mean, it sounds bad, but you're able to get out of people what you need, but they're getting what they need out of it as well. You just can build a business case.
So The Sell is Human. The author's name is Daniel Pink.
Yeah.
And to your point, at the beginning of the book, they do this big study. They surveyed like 10,000 professionals in every industry, and what they found was that at the very lowest end of the spectrum, 40% of every professional's job is sales.
Yeah.
Right. And you read it, and then he kind of, that's like the beginning of the book, and then he starts giving you all those examples like you just talked about. And then, by the way, there's a lot in common between, I think, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People and To Sell is Human. Like, he talks about his ABC, right? It used to be always be closing.
Yeah.
He talks about attunement, buoyancy, and clarity, right? And like and I think a lot of, especially attunement, is right in line with Carnegie's like whole perspective.
It's
so good. That's awesome.
It is great.
You've hit a lot of this, but like, if you could, in a couple sentences or whatever, why do you love sales, Tyler?
I loved sales because I love the kind of you get out of it what you put into it, like just like motivation, right? Like I could go in and I could put in the extra work and I could invest in myself and do these things and I could make more money. And I mean, early in my career, like the goal was, how can I make as much money as possible as fast as possible? And I loved that I had that control. And that was really, really nice because I was always a person, even in sports, like I wanted to be the first one in. I wanted to be the last one out. I wanted to be the best. And this is a career path where you're in that situation. Like you can get out what you put in.
100%. Awesome answer. Last question. We ask every guest this, Tyler. When we talk about why we focus on athletes and veterans, it's because these are folks that understand what it means to be dialed in. And our job as an organization is to get them dialed in again. What does it mean to be dialed in for you as an entrepreneur and as a salesperson?
Dialed in. To me, dialed in it's clarity, right? It's clarity of your mission. It's clarity of your expectations. It's preparation, right? So that when you get into the game, your mind's off and you're just in go mode, right? You're in a position where you can be successful and not have to be worrying about falling behind or having anything. I mean, you're dialed in. You have put yourself and the resources around you to be successful so you can just play the game.
I love it. Clarity. That might be the name of the episode right there. I love it. Tyler, this was an awesome conversation, man. Thank you so much for giving us your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, JR. Thanks, man.
Yep.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.